922 basic training video number 2, and in this video I'm going to be showing you the basics of adding devices to the SLC line, or what we call in the 922 the CNET card. Please note that in the hardware tree we have 4 different circuits. Now with this panel, this is the 922, you can have 252 devices and they can all be on circuit 1-1 if you choose. I would highly recommend using all 4 circuits if available and practical. For example, if you have a 4-story building and you stuck all devices under circuit 1-1, and in a year from now you have a trouble and there's a short circuit, you have to start with the entire building. If you had 4 floors and you stuck floor 1 on circuit 1 and floor 2 on circuit 1-2 and so on and so forth, and you came in a year later and you had a short circuit on circuit 2-1, you already know that you have a short either on the panel itself and you have damaged hardware at the panel, or more likely you have a bad device or a bad wire on the 3rd floor. Leave the 1st, 2nd, and 4th alone. And by the way, until you got there with the previous where you had everything on one circuit, your panel didn't work at all. But in this case, the 1st, 2nd, and 4th floor worked. So you had some fire protection until you came there to fix it. So if you can, use the other circuits. Your troubleshooting in the future will thank you. But with that being said, to the main meat of this video, adding devices. Now there's several methods you can use. I'm going to be showing you 2 major methods. The first method starts here in the hardware tree, where you would create a device. So in this case, I'm going to pick circuit 1-1. I'm going to create 3 devices. Smoke will be a smoke over the panel. A pull station, which will be the pull station by the panel. And we say a H-D for a sprinkler water flow and sprinkler tamper by the panel. So let's add these 3 devices. I'm going to go to OP921, that's a smoke. Notice there's 3 choices here. We're going to be doing detector only. That's just basically saying I have a smoke in a regular base. If you had a smoke detector that was actually part like of a duct detector, you would use with output. And you even have audible bases, that would be that selection here, but we're just doing a regular smoke. So OP921 detector only. And then pulsation, we're doing HMSD. And then we're doing an H-D for our water flow and tamper. Now for this method, we're going to be changing the names of these sensors here and the inputs. So in the naming convention here, they call this one the parent and everything underneath it the child. So the OP921 is the parent and the fire sensor is a child. The H-D is the parent and it has 2 children. So before I change these descriptions, I just want you to notice that there is an exclamation point by the sensors. It's yellow. And what that's indicating, yellow exclamation point, means it's a warning. It's not an error message, but it is a warning, meaning that it will save, it will upload to your panel. But in this case, you will have a trouble on your panel. And the trouble is reflecting that, hey, these sensors, they're not assigned. So when that smoke detector goes off, nothing's probably going to happen because it's not assigned to do anything. The panel doesn't know what to do with this smoke detector. But before we get to that point, let's name these. So this is fire sensor, and we're going to call it smoke over panel. You made that description change here on customer text. Again, for the pull station, we'll say pull by panel. H-D, so the first one's going to be our water flow. Water flow by panel. And the next one's going to be the sprinkler tamper by panel. Now all descriptions are shown up here. No, I did not change the parent, only the children. It's important that which one we change here for the next step. For the next step, we're going to go to detection. And in detection, you have the main detection area, and then you have sections. You can create multiple sections. You don't have to. Sometimes it's useful for organization, and sometimes it's useful for the control tree. But in this case, I'm going to call this section panel area. Well, I guess we already have a panel area if we look here. So we're going to do everything in this panel area. We're going to, we cannot. Alright, so let's just leave this panel area alone. Go back to this section here, and we'll call this section Devices by Panel. And we're going to create a new zone here. Now for our smoke detector, it's going to cause an alarm. So we're in an automatic alarm zone, single standard. And then for our pull station, we're going to do a manual alarm zone because it's a manual pull station. Then we have the sprinkler water flow. If you look here, we have a section called water flow. And last but not least, we had the sprinkler tamper, which we treat that as a supervisory. We want this to be a self-restoring panel, so we're going to say supervisory non-latching. Again, we have the yellow exclamation points because these zones we just created are not linked to anything. So at this point, nothing's ever going to set this alarm zone off. Now we'll fix that. Clicking on this alarm zone, if we right click, you have an option here called Assign. Clicking that Assign brings up a pop-up, and it should take you to the first assignable element. In this case, though, it took me to input, which is wrong, because we don't want alarm zone to go off by the inputs in HRD. We should go to Automatic, and there it is, our fire sensor, our smoke detector. Now, there's a checkbox right here called Inherit Customer Text. If we check this, when we assign this to the hardware, it's going to pull the text from the hardware. And I'm going to close this window for now. But notice it is assigned now. It says smoke over panel. And now this has a child. That child is a link to the hardware. The link to the hardware actually shows up here at the bottom on the blue hyperlink. And it shows you over to the left, hardware. So you can click this link and it will take you to the hardware associated with that detection. And same here on the hardware. If you look, now it's linked to detection. Now let's continue. We've got a manual alarm zone. Right click, Assign, and it's under manual. And there it is. There's our pull station. And we hit Assign. Now let's assume for a second you had 100 more devices to assign. You could close this window every time and then right click and assign and pop the window open. Or you can leave the window open like this. I'm done with the manual alarm. I click the water flow and this window will change. So I click the next thing, water flow, assign. I need to do my supervisory. I click it over here and assign that to input 2. Why you would want to do this is as your program gets bigger, every time you right click and assign, this window may take a few seconds to load. It may take up to 10 seconds in some really large systems. So anything that can help speed you up if you're doing a whole bunch of repetitive work is a blessing. But this is method 1 of how to add devices. You start with the hardware, you update the text on the children of the hardware, then you create a detection tree, the zones, and then you assign the zones, making sure to inherit the text. Now, for the next time, I'm going to make the exact same 4 zones, but I'm going to do a different method. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these for now. Same with hardware. Close these up. Pick all 3 and delete. Yes to all. So for the second method, we don't do it in a hardware tree. We start in detection. We do all of our work in detection. So click in that section, Devices by Panel. We're going to right click on there. And below Assign, there's another one called Create and Assign. We'll go ahead and select that. And this window is a little different. First off, it shows us our 4 circuits. Everything's going to be in circuit 1 for this. And we're going to say our first thing was a automatic alarm zone. So we open that up. What kind of device was it? It was an OP921. So we scroll down to find that. OP921, detector only. Customer text, you can put that right here. Smoke over panel. And before I leave the screen, I just want to show there's a few more options. We're adding 1 smoke, but we can add 100 smokes from this spot right here. If you want to do that, instead of saying 1 device, we would add 100. And And when we hit create assign, it will make 100 smokes. And right here, what's the address we're starting with? Number 1. We could totally start with number 15. And the first device will be 15, and we're doing 100 devices. The next one's 16, 17, and so on, until we have 100 devices. I'm not looking to do that, so I'm going to change this back to 1, and our smoke detector should be device number 1. Create and assign. Now I'm going to mix it up. Last time we did the pull station and then the HRD. I want to show you something that can mess you up on large systems by doing the HRD and then the pull station. So the HRD is going to be a water flow zone, HRD, or on circuit 1.1, and this was going to be water flow by panel, and number device 1, and we're going to make this number 2. So on a hardware tree, when you program this with DPU, this device is number 2. Create and assign. Now note the HRD actually has 2 zones. So to handle that, it shows another pop-up, and it's asking about the second zone. Is the second zone also a water flow? If so, you're good to hit OK now. But no, this is going to be a tamper. So we're going to make this a supervisory zone. And its description is going to be sprinkler tamper by panel. And everything looks good now. Hit OK. And then we're going to add the pull station. And the pull station was a manual alarm zone, HMSD, and this one's going to be pull by panel. And our smoke was address 1, our HRD is address 2, so we're doing the pull station with the DPU. It's going to be number 3. Create and assign. Now, I'm going to show you in a hardware tree. These 3 things have been made. Note, all of our descriptions are going to be in detection tree only. There are no descriptions here other than the default one. So we said pull by panel, water flow by panel, smoke over panel. You will not find these on the hardware tree. Is that a problem? Generally speaking, no. Anytime your panel reports something like an alarm, smoke detector over the panel goes off, it's going to read it from the detection tree. If that device goes missing, it's going to read it from the detection tree. It's not going to read descriptions from the hardware tree. So you are just fine with leaving the hardware by default how it is. Having the descriptions match, that's just a matter of personal preference. But I want to show you where you can mess up on doing large systems. If you're somewhat of a control freak or you just like things to everything match up. So right here, my pull station, I said it is address number 3. But anything that shows up is going to read from the detection tree. So if I pull this pull station, what zone number shows up? It will not be 3. Instead, it shows up as number 4. Because the HRD took up 2 zones, every zone gets its own number in detection. So even though the HRD only has number 2 as its hardware, it took 2 and 3 for detection. So if you have a system where you want everything to match up, so you got hardware number 117 and you want it to match up perfectly on detection, letting the system do its own thing will mess you up. However, you do have choices. So I want to be this control freak. Okay, no problem. So I know my HRD was address number 2. So for this zone 3, I just make this number 1002. And I know everything with the 1000 actually is, just take away the 1000 number and you got 2. So if I had an HRD number 102, maybe I make my zone 1102. Come up with whatever naming convention you want. But now number 3 is open, so I can change my pull station to zone 3. And everything matches up. So now 3 on my detection tree matches 3 on my hardware tree. Number 2 For the water flow is number 2 over here. The number 2 for my second input is number 1002. Me personally, I would not recommend using the 1000 method if you have multiple panels, because you'll have another issue. If you have multiple panels, every panel has addresses 1 through 252. However, detection has a zone number, and that zone number can only be used once for the whole system. So if you had 5 panels, you can have 5 hardware number 1s. But for your detection tree, you can only have 1 number 1. So what would I do in that case? Maybe I say panel 1 is number 1 through 999. Panel 2 is 1001 through 19999. I think I did too many 9s there, but kind of set aside so you would know just by seeing the zone number which panel it is. And that way you can keep it nice and clean. But you don't have to. And if you're fine with the zones being whatever they are, you can do that. But for me, I am a control freak, so I do methods like this where I would change it. And this is a 252 point panel, so I should never see a number higher than 252 naturally. So if I make this 502 instead of 1002, I know anything in between 1 and 1000 is panel 1, and I know anything over 500 is restarting a number. So anything that's 502, I know it's actually 2. If I had another device, just for example, this is confusing you, I'm going to make another device here. It's going to be an FDCIO. And where did that go? Here we go. FDCIO Class B. Now the FDCIO actually adds 4 inputs. So if we're doing that, we need 4 zones here. So let's go ahead and make 4 zones. I'll make them all supervisory. Noting when adding zones or adding hardware, you can do a copy and paste. So I'm going to copy this zone and add it 3 more times. And then I'll assign these. Do you see what happened here? I assigned them all, but they all went to the same input, where I meant to move them to these. And you see they're enabled 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can drag and drop these without any issue. However, I need to change the number here because this is my 3rd child, but it's my only child. Doesn't make sense. So it makes sense for the hardware tree. The hardware has 4 children, but this supervisory zone only has 1 child. So having number 4 will mess it up. So right here where it says number 4, make that number 1. Same thing with here. Number 1. So each one of these parents only has 1 child now, and that's child number 1. If that makes sense. Now note a couple things. Last number I had was 502. So the system automatically assigned the next available number from the highest number I have. So 502 goes to 503, then 504. Well, I didn't mean for that to happen. I meant this one to be number 4, because it's hardware tree number 4. And then everything past that, I'll say this is 504, that's fine, and then maybe 604 and 704. Doable. If you have 1 panel, you can do the 1004, 2004, 3004. You can have numbers in the 10,000, so 10,004. It's whatever system you want to create. Just note that this is not going to match up. 704 is connected to hardware tree number 4. As you get more and more panels, this can be confusing. So just create a system ahead of time and work with it. And one more thing before I wrap this video. With the FDCIO, it gives us 4 inputs and 4 outputs. An output will never cause an alarm, only an input. So the output we do not assign to a detection tree. Outputs are something we cause to happen. That will come later on a control tree. But with this, The basics of adding SLC devices should be clear to you.